Okay, what we are talking about today are sequences. A sequence is a set of numbers that follows a pattern, and each number in a sequence is called a term. So it says each term in an arithmetic sequence is found by adding a fixed number to the previous term, and that fixed number is called the common difference. Okay, so it says write a rule for each sequence and then find the next three terms. Okay, so if we're looking at this 2, 6, 10, 14, right, what am I adding every time? If you're not sure, use a calculator and do like 14 minus 10, and then 10 minus 6, and then 6 minus 2. What did you get every time? You should have got 4. So we have to write the rule like this. Start with 2 and, not multiply, and add 4 repeatedly. Okay, there's not a shortcut. There's no way to get around it. Okay, it's just what we have to do. You have to write it like that. And I'm pretty sure on your homework today you have to type it. Okay, so make sure that you're spelling things correctly. Okay, not adding extra stuff in, etc., etc. Using the numbers because it's going to make a difference in whether or not the Google form counts it as right or wrong. Okay, so now it says find the next three terms. So 2 plus 4 is 6, 10, 14. So use a calculator if you need. 18, 22, and 26 are what would come next. Okay, and if I asked you what's the common difference, that would be 4. Because that's what we're adding every time. Okay, I don't ever expect you to like write. This is not part of the rule. I just wanted to circle it so that you knew. Okay, look at the next one. We have 5, 12, 19, 26. Okay, some of you probably already figured it out in your head. If you weren't sure, again, use a calculator to figure out how much you're jumping up every time. Okay, and you're going up by 7. So for the rule, we're gonna say start with 5 and add 7 repeatedly. Okay, and again, there's no shortcut. I know it's annoying, but we have to do it. Okay, so the next three would be 26, and feel free to use your calculator. Whoops. Plus 7 is 33. Plus 7 is 40. Plus 7 is 47. Okay, and then on this next one, 6, 4, 2, 0. You're like, what is happening? Because instead of going up, it's going down. Okay, but it always has to say add. So if you are going down, we're gonna say start with 6 and add. How can we use subtract? Instead of using subtraction, how can we write that? Start with 6 and add -2 repeatedly. So 0 plus -2 would be -2, -4, -6. Okay, and make sure on your Google form today, and I've written it out there, but you're not putting commas in between. You're just putting a space. Okay, so that's arithmetic sequences, when you're adding the same thing every time. And then we have geometric sequences that are found by multiplying the previous term by a fixed number. And this fixed number is called the common ratio. Okay, so here we're starting with this one and we're like, what? Because you're adding 4, then adding 8, then adding 16. Okay, so you're not adding the same thing every time. So let's look at what you're doing. Okay, if you weren't sure, you would start here and say, well, what's 32 divided by 16? That's 2. Well, what's 16, excuse me, divided by 8? It's 2. What's 8 divided by 4? It's 2. So we know that what we're doing on this one is we're starting with 4 and multiply by 2 repeatedly. Okay, again, there's no shortcut. I know it is what it is. So when we have to find the next three, we're going to do 32 times 2 is 64, and then 64 times 2 is 128, then 128 times 2 is 256. Okay, and if I asked you what is the common ratio, you would say it's 2. Okay, because it's what we're multiplying by. Okay, the next one. You're not adding the same thing every time. So what is happening? So again, if you're not sure, start on 16. 16 divided by 32. What did you get? Just kidding. 16 divided by 32, I got 0.5. Well, what's 32 divided by 64? 0.5. Well, what is 64 divided by 128? 0.5. So therefore, we are multiplying by 0.5. So we're going to say start with 128 and multiply by 0.5 repeatedly. Okay, and then the next three would go 8, and then half of 8 is 4, and half of 4 is 2. Okay, look at the next one. It looks super weird because we're going positive 2, negative 6, positive 18, negative 54. Okay, so I know I'm not adding the same thing every time, but what is happening? So again, if you're not sure, start over here and do negative 54, or 54, and then negative, divided by 18. That's negative 3. Well, what's 18 divided by negative 6? It's negative 3. What's 6, negative 6, excuse me, divided by 2? Negative 3. I'm multiplying by a negative. So I'm going to write start with 6 and multiply by negative 3 repeatedly. And I know it makes sense because positive times a negative is a negative. Negative times negative is positive. Positive times negative is negative. So now use your calculator. Okay, and I have negative 54 times negative 3 is positive 162. And then positive 162 times negative 3 is negative 486. And then negative 486 times negative 3 is positive 1,458. Okay, let's look at this bottom one right here. I'm going to rewrite it because it's a little bit hard to see, but it's 1 over 2, 1 over 4, 1 over 8, and 1 over 16. Okay, so let's talk about what we know about fractions. So when I'm multiplying fractions, okay, I'm not adding the same thing every time, because if I'm going from a half a pizza to a fourth of a pizza, right, that would be subtracting a fourth, but then subtracting another fourth would be 0, not an eighth. So I know that I'm multiplying. So I'm going to be multiplying it by 1 times what makes 1? 1, right? 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So on the top, I know I'm multiplying by 1. And then down here, 2 times what makes 4? 2. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. So what am I multiplying by every time on that one? 1 over 2. So I'm going to write start with 1 over 2 and multiply by 1 over 2 repeatedly. And my next three would be 1 over 32, 1 over 64, and 1 over 128.